Here we go. We're going to talk about education and games. And I'm really excited to be here because I love talking about game. Are you two going to talk the whole time? Just checking. I'm a middle school teacher. I'm just kidding. They're my friends. You can imagine how I'd treat you if you weren't. Okay. Behave. So I'm a middle school teacher, and that's not how I started my life. I actually started my life when I met my husband and we moved to Los Angeles, and I worked on the space program, actually for NASA. Totally fun. And the reason I like to mention that is because when I went to work in middle school, I had somebody say to me, "So you used to work with a bunch of engineers, now you're hanging out with a bunch of middle schoolers." They said, "Isn't that really different?" And I said, "It's not any different at all. Let me tell you what engineers and middle schoolers have in common. They all think they're the smartest one in the room. They're not afraid to tell you what they think. And they'll listen to you, but they know they're smarter than you, right?" I said it was good training for me, actually. So here we go. This is why we want to do game-based training. And I thought about this. I love this picture. It's actually from Jane McGonigal, who said this is a kid on the verge of an epic win. And we all know what epic wins are, right? Okay, and here's my favorite thing is I taught science, and I'm not trying to say I was great, but I used to blow crap up every day. I had my principal come to me at the very beginning of the school year when they built us a brand new building. He said, "Schrader, you blow it up in the first week, I'm gonna be pissed." And I said, "Cool, I'll wait till the end of the year. I got it. It's no big deal." And everybody knew that's how I ran my classroom, right? So kids were not beating down my door looking like this. And in fact, I think about this and I think, how many of us go to work every day and look like this, right? And I want to say something, and my good friend, Mark, could you wave so that they know who you are? Mark hates it when I say this, but I don't consider myself really a gamer. I play board games. I play little games on my phone when I'm trying to kill time. But the truth is, when my daughters, we had two, when they were growing up, I used to say to them, "You know what? We're not bringing a video game platform into this house. You better find something productive to do with your life." By the way, they're both gamers. And when my daughter met her future husband, he said, "Hey, what games you used to play when you were a kid?" And she said, "Yeah, we weren't allowed." And he looked at her and he said, "Do you know what your mother does for a living now?" And she said, "It's complicated." And my grandkids, I'm trying to keep them from being gamers, but it's not working. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But anyway, this is why we game, right? So as a teacher, I don't know if you know this, when you're teaching middle school, you are dancing. You are dancing as fast as you can every minute of every day. It's just a crazy pace, right? You walk into a classroom in September, somebody hits fast forward button, and in June you come up for air. It is just, that's the way it is, right? Well, kids weren't looking like this in my classroom, and quite frankly, the only time I looked like this was when I was teaching because I loved it, right? So I want to tell you about a kid named Tim. Tim is a great kid. By the way, he has 3 kids of his own now, and we keep in touch and we talk frequently. Tim walked into my classroom one day in May. And by the way, Tim is a hard sell. How many of you know middle schoolers aren't easy to deal with sometimes? Oh, you do know. Did you all teach? Okay, because I'm going to tell you, Tim's a smart kid, and I mean wicked smart. Smarter than I am. And I will tell you that I'm dancing. And Tim, he kind of will look at you and go, "Yeah, I might do that assignment if the mood strikes me," right? And so one day I give him an assignment, all the kids, because it's testing time in every school across America. Don't start me on that topic. And Tim comes in, and I give the assignment because I know that kids are going to be transient because they're going to start pulling kids out for testing. Don't start me on that topic. And they always pull them out of science. You do not want to hear me talk about this. So anyway, Tim, I give the assignment we're going to build games. I figured kids could drop in and go, right, whatever. Well, Tim comes in the day, and I'm giving him a week to do this assignment to build games in my classroom. Comes in, drops a thumb drive in my hand, and I said, What? You want me to print money? You want me to print instructions?" He goes, "No, I hacked into Mario." And I said, "What?" He goes, "I hacked into Mario." Now, I had never met Mario. I've met Mario since, and we are not good friends. I'm sorry, Mark, we're not. And oh my God, he drives me crazy. Somebody just wrecked the darn car, and let's move on. So anyway, Tim hacks into Mario. He makes this plant game. It's about plant cells. And you guys, how many of you have met Mario? You guys have all met Mario? Okay. So Mario would jump, and all of a sudden a question would pop up. And if the kid got it right, he gets the coin, right? And if he doesn't, he falls down a tube. You guys familiar with this? So the point isn't that Tim built it. I put it on my smart board that's on the side of my room, and in 24 hours, I'm not even exaggerating this, every kid in that building had been in my room, and they're knocking on my door. And they're saying things like, hey, Miss Schrader, can we come in and play that game? And you know how I know you probably haven't figured this out, but I'm very sarcastic. And I'm looking at them thinking, you're knocking on my door to play a game about science on your time. So sure, what the heck, go ahead, come in and play. And these kids were just loving this game, right? So then I called my principal down and I said, I am not serving these children in a way that they need to be served. So we went out to Best Buy at the time. And I said to my husband, we're buying this Xbox. And he said, please explain to me why we are in our 50s buying an Xbox. And I said, nah, I got to do it. I got to learn how to play these games. And by the way, if you want a good time, you have a bunch of 7th graders show you how to play video games. I bought a game. Kids would come into my room before class, and my favorite comment was, I bought a Lego game, a Harry Potter Lego game. Have you heard of it? And I bought it because I love Harry Potter, and I thought at least I'll understand the storyline, right? And and those kids are screaming at me, jump, jump, jump. And I'm playing with kids, right? We got 2 controllers, jump, jump. And I'm like, I know I'm supposed to jump. I don't know how to jump. And little Destiny, cute little kid, she says, hey, Miss Schrader, I'd tell you to buy an easier game, but I don't think they make one. And I said, thanks. And then one little boy ran out in the hall and said, you guys got to come in here. Schrader sucks. This is hilarious. And then Liam's cute, I shouldn't say little 7th grader, but because he's a lot taller than I am. But he says, Schrader, I'm going to help you. That's going to be my goal in life. And he would come in, and I said, okay, I'll do 15 minutes a day. That's all I can handle. My brain just can't handle it. This is not what I do. So he would come in, and one day he says, okay, Schrader, that's the bell. I got to go. And I just look up at him. And he reaches out, grabs the controller, and shuts the game off. And later in science class, I said, how'd you know to do that? He goes, Schrader, you weren't tracking. Like, you weren't hearing me at all. And I said, I'm not. And then about a month later, he walks up to me in the hallway. I want you to picture this tall 7th grade kid walking up to me in the hallway, and he says, I know what you're doing. And I said, what? He goes, you're avoiding me in the mornings because you don't want to play. And another teacher heard him and he actually thought like there was going to be so he walked over and he said, how are you talking to Schrader? And I said, nah, he's right. I'm going to staff meetings on purpose to avoid this kid because playing is hard on my brain, right? Because I'm not steeped in it. But Liam and I survived, and he was able to teach me some things. So that's my story in games, and that's how I got started. But here's what happened. You always want to listen to kids, right? And when you think about industry, and I think about education, this is the most significant thing we can do for kids. And I'm going to tell you why. Because this is how people learn. It's how animal learns. I have a really good friend. His name is Paul Darvasi. You probably met him. When he sees the kittens up there, he goes, those are kittens learning to kill. And he's right. This is how animals learn. And by the way, we are not, right? We are not really that far off from being in the animal kingdom, right? We can control our environment as humans, but really, this is how we learn. So I started my trek and said, okay, we're going to start pushing games in education. This is what we're going to do. Here's why. Because we don't get to choose what motivates kids. And in fact, you don't get to choose what motivates anybody. Do you see this little formula on the left? That motivates me. I'm a math person. I love solving math problems. I get it. I have a brother who's an engineer. We call each other daily solving problems like that. That doesn't motivate most kids. I don't know if you know that. That motivates kids. How many of you know what that game is even? It is Call of Duty. How many of you knew that? I've tried to play Call of Duty, and it was an experience with 2 teenage boys. They were trying to teach me, and let me tell you, it didn't go well for me. But they were kind. And they finally were like, Schrader, we think you should find something else to do. I said, okay, right? This is what motivates kids. And I get all this time. I hear a lot. These are the arguments I hear about. Oh, well, if we start using games to teach, Kids, I had a lady last week in my doctoral program. She goes, this will be taking we will be starting to use extrinsic motivation. And I said to her, I'm sorry, where in the world are you ever going to get an A, a B, a C, a D, or an F? Where is that? When you go to work, do they give you points for showing up? We created this game, and it's called education, and we've taught kids how to play it. And the kids that love to play it are the ones that learn to play it, but so many of those kids don't know how to play it. And it makes no sense because it's not intrinsic. You watch little kids, they don't know what an A, B, C, D, and F means until they get to school, and we teach them how to play education. And I'm going to just tell you, I think the game sucks because we're not serving our kids. So here we go. How many of you, raise your hand if you know what rock, paper, scissors is? Oh, good. Because I have tried really hard. I have an 8-year-old granddaughter who is the love of my life, and I have tried really hard not to be like overly influential. Not that my daughter would let me, but one day she comes up to me and she says, hey, Nama. That's what she calls me. It's my favorite word on the planet. Hey, Nama, you want to play rock, paper, scissors? And I say to her, how do you know how to play rock, paper, scissors? And she rolls her eyes. She learned that young. And says, what? Everybody knows how to play rock, paper, scissors, Nama. And I said, really? Okay. So she and I play rock, paper, scissors. My favorite thing is that my 2-year-old grandson is standing there with us. And what does he start doing when he sees us? Yeah, he starts hitting his hand. And he's just laughing and smiling. He has no idea what's going on, right? Because we love to play. Humans play. It's how we learn. He will know how to play rock, paper, scissors without any instruction from me quite quickly. So this is the program I used to work on. This is the space shuttle. That's the Saturn rocket. And my favorite thing is I got to go to Houston this summer. Yes, this summer. Worth every second of it, of the heat and all of it. Because let me tell you something. You have more power sitting in your hand right now than it took to launch either one of these rockets. And I know that. I used to work on the program. And what do you think most people do with their phone? Yeah, they're not looking at cats. 85% of them are playing games. That's what we're using this kind of power for, to play games. And of course, when the lady gave the speech and said that, I thought it was great. I'm like, sweet, right? Because here's what I know for sure. 96% of all kids play games, and they think it's actually higher, but they can verify the 96%. If you walked into a classroom and you knew that 96% of all your kids had something in common, what would you do with that something? You'd leverage it, right? 96%, all kids. And they say the number one growing demographic of game players, do you know what it is? Women over 48. Now, I don't know if you can tell this, but I'm a woman and I'm over 48, right? No, you can laugh, but I have a sister. I have actually 7 sisters. And this summer I said to my sister saw me, she goes, are you dyeing your hair? And I said, gray? You think I'm dyeing my hair gray? And she goes, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, no wonder I'm the smartest person in this family. Like, that's crazy talk. Anyway, what I'm saying is we need to leverage what works for kids. You don't get a pick. We don't get a pick in our industry what motivates kids. But I'll go with the cat picture too. Thank you, sir. Okay, you keep looking up cat pictures. But really, games. Here you go. What's the most played board game of all time? Anybody know? It is not. Say it again. Chess. And this is what I find fascinating about chess. And I'm going to talk about equity, and I'm going to talk about diversity right now because chess is the most played game they have ever found. By the way, how many of you have heard of the Queen's Gambit? Yeah, when that show aired, what was it, Netflix, I think? You couldn't touch a chess game anywhere at all. But my point about chess is, so they've looked, believe it or not, I was reading a book about ancient games and where games came from. Don't judge me, or you can judge me, but don't tell me. Okay, so here's the thing. Chess has been found, a version of chess in every civilization since the beginning of time. right? And here's the cool part. They found that the chess games were based on the civilization where they found them. If there was a civilization near the water, they had boats instead of ponds. And this was my favorite thing that they talked about. Do you know the queen used to be the least powerful piece on the board? The least powerful. Until what? Until the queens of England started taking power. And when the queens of England started taking power, chess shifted. All of a sudden, that queen became the most powerful. You know, chess is like this history lesson. And while that may not fascinate you and it may not fascinate the kids, it does fascinate me because I always think about this in terms of equity and diversity. Right? Everybody can access a game. And you know what happens when kids can't understand instructions? What do? They make them up. And here's what's really funny. For people who are developing games, and I'm not telling you how to do your job, kids don't read the instructions. They just, I love it when because, you know, I visited game developers and I've worked with them and they're like, well, we should have a set of instructions. I'm like, yeah, for who? Kids aren't reading them. They're going to play and they're going to figure it out. And by the way, if they don't like your game, guess what they're going to do? They're going to change the rules and they're going to make it enjoyable for them. I can't even tell you how many times I'd build a game for kids for middle school and they'd go, Schrader, this would be so much better if you'd do X, Y, Z. And for every game developer I've ever talked to, please put kids at your table. If you want a game and you want to use it in education, teachers, yeah, okay. But kids are driving the bus, as they should. This is my favorite thing. So I was heading to Finland to do my doctoral work, and this nice lady, her name is Lisa Wellman, she heard I was heading to Finland, and she called me, and she said, I want to go. And I said, I don't really travel with state senators. That's not part of my job. I don't like, that makes me a little awkward. Now I'm nervous. And she said, well, you do now. And if you've ever met Senator Wellman, she's a force. And it was so funny because we went to Finland, we looked at schools, we looked at games, and at one point we're in it, we're actually sitting in a game developer business. And she looks down the table at me and she said, Tammy, make this happen. I said, excuse me? She goes, I want this to happen in the state of Washington, and we should be leading the way. Seattle has more game developers, I think, than any other community in the world, right? We should be making this happen. And sadly enough for me, I live across the state in Spokane, so I kind of feel like the stepchild, right? But we've got one of the oldest indie games in the country over there called Scion. If you've never heard of Myst, it's fabulous. Myst is amazing. And you know, if you've never toured there, I'm going to just tell you, I called them up and I said, you guys are in my backyard, can I tour? And they said, yeah, we don't really do that, but we'll do it for you. And so if you've never done that, I mean, seriously, their whole building was built on their game. You have to cross a bridge to get into the building. It is beyond bloody freaking awesome. Can I say that? I'm not sure if that's swearing, so I'll apologize. Anyway, so we're sitting in Finland, and I'm in an Uber, actually. And a colleague of mine who is big into the Minecraft world, Stephen Reed, says, hey, Tammy, they're doing a whole game thing in Malta. You should come. And before I can even say, where is Malta, which I didn't know, Senator Wellman says, yeah, Tammy's not going anywhere without me anymore. And I said, excuse me? And she goes, I said, did I miss a memo? And she goes, no, I'm serious. Like, we should be doing this. And so then she invited me to speak to, in fact, I think it was last December, to the congressional team. She's head of education in our state right here. And she is excited about this gaming thing in education. And it is fabulous. So she is behind wanting to put your games into schools. And she's head of education. Did I mention that? Did I also mention she's a force? And in fact, when she found out I was coming over here today, we're having dinner tonight so we can talk about it. So if you've got anything you want said to Senator Wellman, please come talk to me. In the meantime, we headed to Sweden and Australia and Greece, and we are looking for money, and she is a powerhouse, looking for money to put your game in schools. This is my other, sorry, Mark, here's your picture. So Mark asked me the other day about doing something about the world. So if you want to know anything about the World's Fair in 2025, Mark's right here. Mark, could you wave to people so they know? Yeah. Okay. But I don't know if you know this, because I didn't know this, but you guys had a big PAX meeting over here or something in Seattle, and Secretary Hobbs did the keynote. And I said to Senator Wellman, who's become my friend, I said, why do we have the Secretary of State talking to a gaming industry? And she said, he wants to put board games into schools. And I said, huh? She goes, you want an introduction? I said, yes. So I walk up to Secretary Hobbs. He's lovely, by the way. And I said, board games in classrooms. Can you explain to me why you are interested in games? He said, because I'm an original D&D player. And I said, and we're done. I get it. I've got schools introducing D&D. I've got, even during COVID, this was one of my favorite classes. I live in Cheney, Washington. One of the teachers that's local, she put D&D in an after-school club and then started teaching social studies with it. Fabulous. It was fabulous. And I got invited to the party. So, Mark, am I close? I got 2 minutes. I have 2 minutes. 2 extra minutes. So I just want to say I have actually left my job at ESD 101, not because they weren't supportive of me doing games, but because they ended up having somebody that told me I was way too joyful to do my job. And I thought, if I could back these up, you know that picture of that person being excited? I thought about this. We should all be coming to our lives every day like that. Do I? No. But I want to create a life where it's just all fun and games.